Assalamu alaikum dear students. Our today's topic is methods of sampling. These are the principal methods or techniques of sampling. Number 1, random sampling. Number 2, purpose sampling. Number 3, stratified sampling. Number 4, systematic sampling. Number 5, coda sampling. Number 6, convenience sampling. Now the first one, random sampling. Random sampling is that method of sampling in which each and every item of the universe has equal chance of being selected in the sample. See, in other words, we can say there is an equal probability for every item of the universe being selected in the sample. Which of the various items of the universe would get selected in the sample is beyond the control of the investigator. Uh, the selection is left entirely to the chance factors. This method is used particularly when various items of the universe are homogeneous or identical to each other. This method is impartial and economical. See, random sampling may be done uh, through various ways. Like I can give you example of lottery method. See, in lottery method, paper slips are made for each item of the universe. These slips are shuffled in a box. Then impartially, some of the slips are drawn to form a sample of the universe. See, this random sampling has merits as well as demerits. Now, what are its merits? This method is free from personal bias of the investigator, and each and every item of the universe stands equal chance of being selected. The universe gets fairly represented by the sample. This is very simple and straightforward method. Random sampling is very simple and straightforward method. Now, what are its demerits? Uh, this method does not guarantee proportionate representation of different items in the universe, and random sampling does not give weightage to certain important items in the universe. Number second is purposive sampling. Purposive sampling is that method in which investigator himself makes the choice of the sample itself, make the choice of the sample items which in his opinion are the best representative of the universe. Now, see, in this method of sampling, selection of the sample items is not left to the chance factors, it's simply made by choice. And purposive, or we can say also in deliberate sampling. See, this method of sampling is especially suitable when some of the items in the universe are of special significance and ought to be included in the sample. For example, if an investigation is to be made relating to the iron and steel industry in India, then the inclusion of such industries as the Tata Iron and Steel Company is obvious a purposive selection. Uh, it has merits. This method is one of the important merit of this method is that this method is flexible to allow the inclusion of those items in the sample which are of special significance, and selection of items can be deliberately tuned for the purpose of study. It's very simple technique of selection of the sample items. And what are its demerits? There is a possibility of personal bias in the selection of items, and because of the possibility of personal bias, reliability of the results become doubtful. Number 3 is stratified sampling. In this method, population is divided into different strata having different characteristics, and some of the items are selected from each strata so that the entire population gets represented. This method of sampling is generally adopted when population consists of different groups with different characteristics, and each stratum should be represented in correct proportion in the sample in this method. Now, I can give you example. Suppose there are 50 students in class 11th. Out of them, 30 have studied mathematics and 20 have studied home science in their class 10th. Thus, the population of the 50 students gets divided into two strata, consisting of 30 and 20 students respectively. From each of these strata, items would be selected proportionality such that the sample represents the characteristics of the entire population. If of the total 50 students, only a sample of 5 is to be selected, then we shall randomly select 3 out of the first stratum comprising of 30 students and 2 out of the second stratum comprising 20 students. However, items may also be selected unproportionately from different strata. See, an investigator may prefer to select 4 students from among us those who studied mathematics and only one from among us those who studied home science. The choice will be governed by the nature of the inquiry and wisdom of the investigator. Now, this stratified sampling is also called mixed technique of sampling because this method involves the mixture of both purposive sampling and random sampling. And the division of population in different strata is purposely done while selection of the items is done at random. Now, what are the merits of this stratified sampling? This method covers diverse characteristics of the population, and on the basis of diverse characteristics of population, a comparative analysis of the data becomes possible. And this method of sampling offers reliable as well as meaningful results. The demerit of this method is that this method is suitable only when there is complete knowledge about the diverse characteristics of the population. Therefore, this has a limited scope, and there is a possibility of bias at the time of classification of population into different strata. See, another demerit is that when the size of population is already small, it may be difficult to further divide it into smaller parts strata. Now, fourth, uh, fourth is systematic sampling. Fourth method is systematic sampling. In this method, the units of population are numerically, geographically, and alphabetically arranged. Every nth item of the numbered item is selected as a sample item. See, for example, if out of if 10 out of 100 students are to be selected for a sample, then 100 students would be numbered and systematically arranged. One item of the first 10 would be selected at random. Subsequently, every 10th item from the selected number will be selected to frame a sample. If the first selected number is the 5th item, then the subsequent numbers would be 15th, 25th, 35th, 45th, 55th, etc. Now, 55th, 65th, 75th, 85th, and 95th. This method of sampling is in fact a shortcut method of random sampling. Now, what are its merits? This is very simple method. Sample is easily determined, and there is hardly any possibility of personal bias in this method. And its demerit is that every item the demerit of this method is that every item in the population does not get equal chance of being selected because only the first item is selected on the basis of random sampling. And second one is demerit. Second demerit is that if all the items in the population are homogeneous, this method of sampling serves no specific purpose. Now, fifth one is quota sampling. See, in this method, the population is divided into different groups or classes according to different characteristics of the population. See, some percentage of different groups in total population is fixed. Further, some quota of the items to be selected as sample items is fixed for each group. See, the investigator selects the fixed number of items from each group to frame a sample. And this method of sampling is not very expensive, but there is a high possibility of personal bias at the time of selection of the items by the investigator. Accordingly, the reliability of results become questionable. And the sixth one is convenience sampling. See, in this method, the sampling is done by the investigator in such a manner that suits his convenience. For example, an investigator may select a sample of teachers merely by referring to the college prospects. This method is the simplest and the least expensive, but unscientific and unreliable. It depends too much on the whims of enumerators. And what is the reliability? Now, what is the reliability of sampling data? See, the reliability of the sampling data means that the characters of universe are fully represented by the sample. It depends mainly on the following factors. Number one, the size of the sample. See, reliability of the sampling depends on the size of the sample. If its size is very small, it will fail to represent the population. Accordingly, the conclusions would lack reliability. And the second one is method of sampling. If the method of sampling is not simple and exhaustive, it will not adequately represent the population. Consequently, the results will not be dependable. And third one is bias of correspondents and enumerators. See, personal bias of the correspondents and enumerators should be as less as possible. Otherwise, reliability of the sampling data is bound to suffer. And the fourth one is training of enumerators. See, reliability of the sample also depends upon the training of the investigators. If they are not trained to make them expert in their field of investigation, the sample will lack reliability. Thank you very much.